Good day and welcome to Drew's Book Reviews. It's the second video in my adaptation series. This is a 4-part series. We've already done the Bad Adaptations. I'll have that link below. And today we are doing the adaptations that I thought were some of the best adaptations of books. So if you're interested in what I think were some of the best adaptations, stay tuned. That is coming right up on Drew's Book Reviews. All right, let's talk about the good adaptations. So if you've seen my previous video, the bad adaptations, this is the second video in this series of 4 videos I'm planning on adaptations. As with all adaptations, actually before we get into that, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Join me over on the Discord as well as my Bookstagram if you're enjoying this type of content. So I hope to continue to produce a couple more videos in this series, and who knows what series I'll come up with next. Anyway, let's talk about adaptations. Let's talk about the good adaptations. Ones that I have personally enjoyed and ones that I've found to be pretty decent adaptations from the original material. Now, of course, as with all adaptations, it is important to note that when we're adapting from book to screen, there are changes that do need to be made. So every adaptation that goes from book to screen typically has some kind of changes made in order to accommodate the medium in which we're telling the story, to make things flow better. As an example of that, take Ender's Game. Ender's Game is a book by Orson Scott Card, and while Orson Scott Card is not my favorite author anymore, and I find I don't enjoy his work as much as I used to, I do have fond memories of Ender's Game as being one of my favorite science fiction books that I have ever read. The Ender's Game book takes place at a battle school over a 6-year period where Ender enters the battle school essentially at the age of 6, and he basically finishes growing up there until about the age of 12. Many of the characters we see in the book aren't introduced until later in Ender's Game battle school career. In addition to that, there are multiple different armies going on at this battle school and many different battle rooms. In the Ender's Game movie, many changes were made. First of all, there's only a single battle room. In addition to that, our characters were aged up significantly. Ender doesn't actually enter the battle school until he's more of his 13, 14, 15 years old level in the movie itself. In addition to that, characters such as Bean come in essentially right away in the movie, and a lot of changes like that were moved. The timeline was sped up significantly in the movie versus the books, and much of this stuff going on Earth simply wasn't included in the movie, with the Locke and Demosthenes plotline going on back on Earth. Now, a lot of people have criticized Ender's Game movie because of these changes that were made. Personally, I understand these changes. I think these changes were a good change in order to fit the 2-hour medium in which you're trying to tell the Ender's Game story. Overall, though, the look of the movie, the look of the battle school, the look of the battle room, Ender and everything, overall, I just thought it was really good. This definitely was not something that was produced on, a low budget, trying to just push out content on the books in the hopes that it would be good. This was something that, as I understand, Orson Scott Card himself was highly involved in this movie as well. So we have the author involved in the creation of this movie based upon his book. And you could really tell, like, there's so much content out there, so many adaptations where the rights are simply bought and the author is not involved in the production. And we'll get to another example of that later on. But you can tell when an author is involved in the production, or when the production team truly cares about the author's material and the story they want to tell. These changes with Ender's Game I thought were good changes. They made sense in the medium of adapting the book material. They still stuck to the story in the book overall generally quite well. And this is a good thing because they're able to still tell the story effectively with the characters effectively in a way that makes sense without diverting from the primary material of the storyline. And these changes did not negatively impact or affect the story at all. And I thought in general Ender's Game was just a really good adaptation. The next adaptation on this list, and I know this is probably pretty predictable, everybody says it, but that's because it's true. Lord of the Rings Yes, I thought Lord of the Rings, and I think Lord of the Rings is a fantastic adaptation. Now, there were some changes made, some changes I didn't really like. The introduction of Shelob came in way too early in the movies versus the books, when each movie was supposed to be a separate book in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. I didn't like the fact that Tom Bombadil was left out of the movies, but when all said and done, I thought Lord of the Rings adaptation was actually pretty good. This was probably one of the first big budget epic fantasy adaptations, probably one of the ones that started the Hollywood on this. Hey, you know, maybe there's something here. Maybe we can actually accomplish these big budget fantasy adaptations. And I think that Lord of the Rings was probably the catapult for that. And overall, the Lord of the Rings story or adaptation was just really, really good. The effects were great, the setting was great, the look of the movie was just fantastic all around. I loved what they did here. You could tell that this was definitely big budget production. They didn't cheap out, they stuck to the material of the books overall quite well, I felt. And yes, there were some changes made in the books, like, you know, Shelob comes in at a very different time in the movies versus the books. I think I said earlier Shelob came in earlier, maybe, or was it later? Anyway, it doesn't matter. The point is, I thought it was a really good adaptation. I thought they did really well bringing to life the world that J.R.R. Tolkien created in the Lord of the Rings, and overall just did a really good job in this big, massive production of the Lord of the Rings. And it was the start of fantasy adaptations, big budget fantasy adaptations in general. And I just thought it was a really well done show, and I really enjoyed that. So the next adaptation on this list of really good and awesome adaptations, or ones that I thought were really good, is I'm going with the Expanse TV series on Amazon Prime. Now, I actually started watching the TV series before I started reading the books, but I have to say that the adaptation of the TV series along with the books, it's a really good adaptation. I like what they did. They really brought to life what I imagine in the books of what things look like, and I love the way that they do that within the TV series, and I'm really enjoying how that's going. Now, I'm already past the TV series, or past where I am in the books in the TV series, but that's totally cool. As like I said, I started watching The Expanse before I started reading the books, but I thought this was a really good adaptation, and I'm really enjoying the look, the feel of it. You know, now when I read the books, I'm imagining the characters as they're portrayed in the TV show, which is just awesome. And just the look of everything and the sci-fi there, again, it's an example of an adaptation done right. And just the way, what they put into this, the look of the show, everything about it, the characters, I just love what they've done with this adaptation. And I honestly think that this was a really good adaptation of the books. And it's just been done really, really well. And I love seeing a good adaptation, because that just as a book nerd just makes me so happy to see good adaptations and seeing things coming out the way you would want to see them. And when they do come out just looking so good and so well done, like people actually care about the content within the books that they're adapting, and they really want to show this story in this medium. And I love it when that happens. One of my other favorite adaptations that I thought was really good is Jurassic Park. Now, I have read this book, but a long time ago. In fact, I don't even remember if I read the book before I saw the movie, or if I saw the movie before I read the book. But I know I've both seen the movie and the book. I don't think I've seen every Jurassic Park movie. I kind of stopped with the second one for the most part, but I'm just talking about the first Jurassic Park movie. Loved the movie, loved the book. Michael Crichton was one of my favorite writers, and I just love what they did with this. I love seeing these dinosaurs come to life. Now, of course, it's been so long that I know there were some differences between the book and the movie, but it's been so long since I've read or watched either that I don't actually remember exactly what those differences were. But I do remember I loved the movie, I loved the book. I thought the movie was great and a really good adaptation. And just overall, I just thought it was a really, really good adaptation. I mean, come on, seeing these dinosaurs come to life on the big screen and in the movie was just awesome. Giant T-Rex stomping around, all kinds of big dinosaurs. I mean, it's just fun, entertaining, and just overall a good read. I really like how the book was portrayed. I like how Jurassic Park itself was portrayed in the show. And overall, I just thought it was a really, really good show, really good adaptation, and just enjoyable all around. And the last on this list is going to be, and I know some people might disagree with me considering how this show ended. I get it. It didn't exactly end great, but Game of Thrones. Yes, Game of Thrones adaptation of George R.R. Martin's A Song of Fire and Ice, or A Song of Ice and Fire, whatever. The point is, I thought that this was a really good adaptation, at least up until the last season or so. But we do know that George R.R. Martin was involved in the first couple of seasons of this TV show, which I honestly believe is what made the show so successful. Now, aside from the way it ended, we're not going to get into a debate about how this show ended. This show, Game of Thrones, truly showcased what could be done with a good budget and a crew that cares about the material, at least for the first couple of seasons. Honestly, I feel like Game of Thrones was the catalyst for everything going on within Hollywood for big budget fantasy adaptation. Game of Thrones changed the game. Previous to Game of Thrones, most fantasy adaptations that we saw come out, most, not all, there were a few out before them, but most generally were focused on the film, feature film, 2-hour movie type of deal. Game of Thrones came around and said, no, we're gonna make this a TV show. We're gonna put big budget, big money into this TV show, and we're gonna make it work. And they did that for at least the first several seasons. The reason I include this in one of the best adaptations is because of what it did for the industry. And what it did, Game of Thrones was the catalyst, in my humble opinion, for so many different adaptations coming out. I mean, we had The Witcher come out, was after Game of Thrones. We now have Wheel of Time being produced. We now have Isaac Asimov's Foundation is being produced for Apple TV. You know, there's a Lord of the Rings TV series being produced on Amazon Prime as well. And I know there's several other books that have been optioned off for film adaptation. Game of Thrones' success showed why big budget fantasy adaptation can work. And for that, I give it in there for that, I give it one of the best adaptations that we have from the book to the screen adaptations. And let's face it, everyone loves the first few seasons of Game of Thrones. Again, let's forget about the end. Let's just focus on the first few seasons. It was overall a fantastic adaptation, a great show, and I think demonstrated so clearly why big budget fantasy adaptations can succeed. And there are so many more to come, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what's to come with this series, or not this series specifically, but with the future of big budget fantasy epic adaptations. Because I'm confident with the success that we have seen and the big budgets rolling out on TV series that are coming. And of course, you want to stay tuned because I am planning on making a video about the adaptations I'm looking forward to seeing that are in production or announced. But in any case, Game of Thrones did it. It inspired this, in my humble opinion. It's what started the TV series adaptations for big budget fantasy. And I'm really glad that it did, because there's so many good books that can be adapted. And when we put effort, when we put resources into it, we can make it so good. And that is a good thing. And I love seeing my favorite stories come to life on the screen. And I'm really looking forward to that. So there you have it. There are my 5 good adaptations that I really enjoyed and that I think are some of the best adaptations that I personally have seen. Again, I haven't seen every adaptation ever made on every book, but these are 5 of my favorite adaptations that I think have done really well overall from the book to the screen adaptation. So thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. You can join me over on the Discord where we can have a chat about this and lots of other topics, of course. And as always, you can also follow me on Bookstagram. And thank you so much for watching, and until next time, keep on reading. Bye!